Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Tom Coffey, president of the Louisville Forum. Welcome to our May 2024 program. The Louisville Forum programs typically meet at noon on the second Wednesday of each month here at Vincenzo's Restaurant downtown. All are welcome. Founded in 1984, 40 years ago, the Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public issues group. We host debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. For more information on the Louisville Forum, our events, to join or to make a reservation, please visit louisvilleforum.org. Today's program, Louisville Fine Arts, Recent Successes and Contemporary Challenges. A little over a month ago, the Arts and Cultural Production Satellite Account, a product of the National Endowment for the Arts and the Bureau of Economic Analysis that tracks the annual economic value of arts and cultural production, released its data from 2022, which showed that arts and cultural industries hit an all-time high in 2022, contributing 4.3% of gross domestic product, or $1.1 trillion, to the United States economy. However, growth was not sector-wide. Performing arts organizations, non-government museums, and arts-related construction were among the arts industries that have yet to reach their pre-pandemic levels of economic value. For Louisville, until last year, the city actually did not have an office dedicated to arts and culture. However, arts has been a point of emphasis in Mayor Greenberg's administration, and he created the Office of Arts and Creative Industries, and this spring solicited proposals for a comprehensive cultural plan for Metro Louisville. So, consistent with the Louisville Forum mission, a topic that is current and important locally, we have two leaders in our community today, one from performing arts and one from the museum sector, to talk about arts in Louisville. First, seated to my left is Kim Baker, Kentucky native and member of the first Kentucky Center Governor's School for the Arts class. Kim Baker has been president and CEO of Kentucky Performing Arts since 2014. Kentucky Performing Arts has been around 1 year longer than the Louisville Forum, 41 years. In 1983, the Kentucky Center, right around the corner from here, opened with the purpose of promoting state culture and tourism, provide a home for Louisville's prominent performing arts groups, and enable us to see international and nationally renowned artists. Today, the Kentucky Performing Arts includes not just the Kentucky Center, but also the Brown Theater and Old Forester's Paris Town Hall. Kim received her Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Kentucky College of Fine Arts. And in her leadership of Kentucky Performing Arts, Kim has been awarded several honors, including the 2019 Arts Innovation Award at Louisville's annual awards in the Arts Celebration, the 2019 Today's Women's Most Admired Women in the Arts. 2020, she was celebrated as one of Louisville's most admired CEOs at Louisville Business First Annual Awards Ceremony. Welcome, Kim. Thank you. Seated to Kim's left is Michelle Staggs. Michelle is the executive director of KMAC Contemporary Art Museum. KMAC is also around the corner on Main Street, just a few doors down from the Kentucky Center on Museum Row. KMAC Museum, founded in 1981, is a contemporary art museum. Its goal is to educate and inspire while promoting a better understanding of art through exhibitions, education, and collections. The museum explores the relationship between art and craft by identifying art as the big idea and craft as the intersection between process, materials, and labor. KMAC Museum is accredited by the American Alliance of Museums and supported by the Fund for the Arts, the Andy Warhol Foundation, and the Foundation for the Visual Arts, and the Kentucky Arts Council. Michelle has been with KMAC since 2014, beginning as its Director of Development and Community Outreach, and then 2020 became its Executive Director. She is a native of Great Falls, Virginia. She earned her bachelor's at Florida State University and her master's from the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at Indiana University, Indianapolis. Welcome, Michelle. So to begin with, Kim, if you have the mic.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate being asked to speak a little bit about Kentucky performing arts and then have some good dialogue with you as the lunch goes on. So I see a lot of familiar faces in the audience. For those of you that may not know the history, I would just share with you that the center is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. So it came about 40 years ago, but the story started much before that, 17 years prior. It took a long time to get Kentucky Performing Arts built and a lot of important community leaders. And I'm happy to say that today I feel like we are living the original vision and we're looking towards the future. The center is so pleased that every year we have audience members from every single district in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, most states in the country, and several countries also. So we're satisfying that tourism drive that we were created for. But in addition to that, we also have broad education outreach that we work towards with programs like our Governor's School for the Arts. I think that we are partners with many of the wonderful performing arts groups and visual arts groups in this community. There's a lot of innovation happening right now, and I'll look forward to sharing more with you as the lunch continues.
Thank you, Kim. Michelle.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I am delighted to not know many faces in the room. And hopefully, if you have never heard of KMAC Contemporary Art Museum, you will visit us on Main Street beside the Science Center. I know Mike's here somewhere, good neighbor. But for those of you that don't know KMAC Contemporary Art Museum, we started in 1981, and you may have heard some iteration of our name from the past. The Kentucky Museum of Art and Craft, was the Kentucky Art and Craft Foundation, and it was started by Phyllis George and Mary Norton Shands. And really sort of the emphasis at that time was to celebrate and uplift the craft artisans that were around the state. This was before Etsy, eBay, anything on social media, any way for artists to know about each other that may be doing the same type of work in the neighboring community. So it was really ahead of its time. And like all things, like your child grows and evolves, our organization has evolved to think about craft not as a noun, as Tom was talking about in the introduction, but we talk about craft as a verb. So he was talking about our exhibitions focus on the labor, the process, the materials. So it's a very different kind of contemporary art museum, not one that you might see in New York. Our shows tend to be very different than that. And what we focus on and specialize in is contextualizing Kentucky artists. So that means we may have an artist that has a large profile someplace internationally in the contemporary art world, and we'll have an exhibition of that work at the same time that we're featuring somebody from around this region. We work a lot with JCPS and other local school systems. We're in schools come to us. We're in the community, serving about 30,000 people annually, I'd say, from within the museum and around the community. I think I can leave it there, but I have lots of statistics I could share with you, but I don't know that I need to, because I think everyone knows the value that arts bring to the community. And certainly there's significant research and findings about the value of students coming to a museum and museum participation. In fact, the most recent one that I had looked up was that if a student has a museum experience in kindergarten, their achievement level in math, science, and English is something crazy, like 100 points higher than their third grade peers who have never been exposed to a museum. And I think that shows the value of cultural institutions and kids coming in and maybe seeing a possibility for themselves that they haven't seen another place in the world, and just offers a chance for them to think about things a little bit differently.
Kim and Michelle, thank you both very much. And Michelle learned this week that there's one person who had not been to KMAC before, and that was me. And I was very, very grateful. Michelle and curator, Joey Yates, who's here today from KMAC as well, hosted me on Monday, and I was able to take a look. I would encourage anyone to go there who hasn't had an opportunity. It's right across the street from another great Italian restaurant, Luigi's, so you can get something good to eat and then walk over. That's what I did anyway. Before I start the questions, there's one that I had, because I've been in talking to both Kim and Michelle this week. There's obviously been a huge emphasis on our bourbon industry in Louisville and in Kentucky. What impact has that bourbon industry tourism had on performing arts and museums?
You go first then. You look like you're ready.
Well, I mean, I would just say that the bourbon, I guess, boon has been incredible for us, really, because there's a number of different reasons, really. First of all, the attention that brings to our Commonwealth is really important. I think now and the stories that bourbon itself tells of the craft of bourbon is as much steeped in the arts. The arts are at our heart. We're really telling stories. So not only is it driving people to our city, which is creating all kinds of activity here on Main Street, but also through the hotels and out in the state. It's exposing them to our culture. And we are very much also reflective of our culture. Of course, the industry itself is supportive of Louisville. It's supportive of arts and culture in Louisville. So we're thankful for that. But I think it goes beyond that to the very kind of fabric of what we are, as what Kentuckians are, and that craft experience that it brings.
Yeah, from a museum perspective and being just on Main Street, we certainly see the influx of bourbon visitors. We told Tom all about it's a big thing for bachelor and bachelorette parties, as we're kind of sandwiched in between various Airbnbs. I get a lot of traffic from that. We don't see a lot of yet benefits from the increased tourism. I think what's great is they're replacing all of the businesses that are leaving downtown, so there's a little bit more foot traffic. But people will come into our store possibly if we put something, on the first floor of the museum. We have a cafe and a retail shop. If we put some kind of display that might be beautiful glasses that you could drink your bourbon out of, we may get one or two groups of people. But typically people that are going to come to the museum for museum experience, they kind of already have it on their radar. It's not like a bunch of guys tasting bourbon are going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go into that museum. But maybe we can change minds depending on, visibility and how we can market ourselves both right on the street and in literature for people that are signing up for these things ahead of time. I mean, certainly we are grateful. I don't know. We had a brunch, Derby brunch. Angel's Envy was the sponsor. Brown-Forman's always been a partner. So we are grateful for the relationships we have with the industry, but the tourism itself hasn't yet had any kind of real impact on the museum.
And when you said museums and children who are who go to a museum when they're in kindergarten, what does that encompass? What museums does that encompass?
It's any kind of museum experience in particular. They go on a field trip for school, or their parents bring them for a family fun day or something like that. Just walking into a museum, it's sort of like stepping into a book, maybe. So I think must be the correlation and the connection. We don't really, other than the published statistics from the research, they don't go on to further say why. So I think it's anyone's guess about what that is.
But so that would include like the Slugger Museum up the street, or potentially?
Possibly. Sure.
Gotcha.
I mean, I would argue for the arts opening doors to creativity and thinking outside the box in a way that, maybe, although I love the Slugger Museum experience, I'm not sure that it does in the same kind of way.
Okay. Thanks, Michelle. Yes, Lawrence, and please.
First, talk about how far you have recovered and how you've gone about recovering from the pandemic when everything shut down. What's the recovery been so far, and how have you been able to accomplish that? Both of you.
Well, the pandemic was very difficult on everyone. It was particularly tough on tourism and on cultural institutions. We were the first to close. We were the last to come back up. For the Center for Kentucky Performing Arts, we remained closed nearly a year and a half. At that point, we had to reduce our staff from 110 to 12. And that was just to keep our buildings operating and making sure that we could reopen. But we ended up staying very connected by continuing with the Governor's School for the Arts, making it a digital, pivoting and making it digital very quickly, and doing lots of digital programming so that we could continue to connect with audiences. It's been a slow build back for us, but we are now fully operational with all stages operating. I say we have more events in a year than there are days in a year. So I'm really happy to see that. Some of the events that we're having are doing incredibly well. Popular entertainment that you might not think of as arts necessarily, like comedy. It sounds like people really want to laugh. Podcast. Broadway is certainly, it's very difficult to even get subscriptions now. You have to be on a wait list for Broadway. So we're finding that maybe the typical things that worked prior to the pandemic, we have to be inventive. People are trying all kinds of new things, and that's exciting. I would say that overall, there's definitely work to do. It is, like you reported, tracking behind some of the other recovery efforts, but I'm also very, very hopeful when I see all of the folks that are interested in participating, and new faces and new types of art that's being presented and created.
For our museum, we are still a little bit below pre-pandemic visitorship. We are doing, like Kim mentioned, all the virtual programming and all the other things we all embrace. We're doing a lot more than we ever did before. We're trying to make the museum accessible from any way you can imagine, and we're doing that all with less staff. We are open 6 days a week. We had always been 6 days a week, and then when we reopened, we were 3 days. We have been back at 6 for quite a while now with a very small staff doing that. The biggest obstacle we have seen and we have heard, although we may get the random tourists from off the street, is people don't feel safe coming downtown, and we can't get over that hump. We did a marketing survey in the fall. Another organization did it for us, and the number one issue was people saying downtown is unsafe. I think it's, we've got to figure out a way to get that out of people who now don't have a reason to come downtown because they're not coming downtown for work reasons anymore. I think we all collectively need to figure out this problem and get people downtown again. Also, I guess to talk about COVID, we, like probably Kim and most arts and cultural organizations, were able to embrace and seek and implement all sorts of COVID funding, which was amazing and helpful getting us through. Also, our major benefactor, Al Shands, passed away, and we received a very generous bequest from him. So that has been getting us through, but we are facing some really, some very real issues with shortfalls in funding. And for a museum, really 90% of the cost are the people in the museum. And then we're in a historic building, so we have pretty significant building costs. This last year, we spent about $360,000 in improvements to our building, and we're doing all of that on a shoestring. So our funding is not back. People are almost back, coming close. Hopefully, 2025 we'll be able to sit here and say, "Oh my gosh, we have 10% more people coming through our doors than we ever have."
Lourdes, thanks.
Okay, well, actually, you started to answer one of the questions I had about the impact of the security situation downtown and how it's impacting your numbers. But then the other question is, with the population moving away from the urban core, how has that impacted attendance? And then how are the arts being marketed to the greater Louisville area as opposed to just, downtown? If you're not downtown, you're not looking at the billboards, you're not. So how are you reaching the people who live out, out?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we barely have a budget for advertising and marketing. So we are relying a lot on social media, right? We could never really afford billboard advertising. That would be a dream. So basically social media trying to get out in the community. And we offer all sorts, we try to offer all sorts of creative type of programming. Something that's very big right now, and I always ask people when they come in how they hear about it, is we do a free family fun day, so free admission all day. There's hands-on activities that families do together, and they tour through an exhibition. And, let's say about 400 people come for each of those, and it's just a few hours. And if you haven't been to the museum, it's a fairly small space. So 400 people for us is huge on a Saturday. And everyone sees it through various forums like what to do with your family this weekend or whatever. So we, I think, are lucky to benefit from that kind of way to get the word out about what we're doing. Plus, we try to go out into the community. I mean, Cherokee Triangle and Smoketown are not very far out into the community, but we certainly, if there's something going on, if there's a maker fair at U of L, KMAC is present and offering some hands-on kind of workshop or introducing people to artists that, we try to get all over whenever we're invited.
I might just add on to that for us, we see ourselves more about what can we do to help get people downtown and be part of the story for attracting business, attracting residents. For us, most of our events are in the evening, although some events that happen during the day, that can be challenging. But in the evenings and on weekends, we feel that there is a great influx of people coming downtown for events, coming downtown for performances, or maybe at the Yum or right down the street. So we're not feeling it as much. It's more about what can the arts and cultural sector do to be part of that story, to get downtown, to bring it back. And I think it's got a very big important part to play there.
Kim, I think you mentioned that there's a waiting list for Broadway series. Is that right?
That's right.
Related to that, how can you make Broadway series or other events, other arts events, more accessible to a larger number of people, both in terms of zip code and also income level, if you'd both address that question of accessibility?
Well, we've got a real focus on access. In fact, it's core to our strategic plan. And that's part of the reason right now that we're really seeking support so that we can make sure that we're reaching as many people as we can to bring them into the Performing Arts Center. But beyond that, we're also really working with groups to help with support and cost to really get different groups that particularly maybe haven't worked with us in the past, bringing their audiences in, using our space. So we've got a number of new performing arts groups that are actually within the center family. That's been a lot of fun. In some of our smaller theaters, there are 3 theaters within the center on Main. And then of course we have Old Forester's Paristown Hall and the Brown Theater. So not only, we feel like the access issue from not only making tickets affordable and finding ways to do so, but also by partnering with new people and offering support brings in a whole new audience. We're seeking to really mirror Louisville's demographics and make sure that we're serving our broad community.
From KMAC Museum, we offer about, I'll say, 20 hours of free community programming a month. We are free admission for students of any age, for teachers, free for EBT and SNAP card holders. And we just launched a new partnership with TARC to be free admission for anybody with a TARC bus pass. We also participate, if you all haven't heard of the Cultural Pass, that makes all sorts of arts and cultural experiences free for families, students, like through the Louisville Free Public Library all summer long, and we participate with no restrictions. Most other cultural institutions have only, like, I'll say 1 or 2 free days, but we do it all throughout the summer. And as I said, children and students are free, but also with the Cultural Pass, a guardian, a caregiver gets to attend with them. Accessibility is incredibly important to us because we realize even having the word museum in our title sometimes becomes a barrier. So it's why we're committed to doing all of the activities in the community and bringing people in through our free family fun days. Every Friday morning, we offer a program called Tiny Art Tales, and it's a pre-literacy program we developed about 10 years ago. In response to the issues of kindergarten readiness in the community. And that is a free program that we see the same families come back and caregivers with kids every Friday morning. It's great fun, and it's nice to see people from different parts of the community come together and learn from each other. So we're very aware of accessibility being an issue. The other thing I'll mention, if you haven't heard of us, you may have seen social media for what may be sometimes more well-known than the museum, and that's our big fundraising event. It's called KMAC Couture, and it's a wearable art runway show. This year we hosted it at Paris Town, and it's a fundraiser. Let me underscore, it is a fundraiser. The tickets are expensive, and one way we've tried to solve that problem is by having a free dress rehearsal for friends and family of the artist and the models that participate to come in before the actual show so they can experience something similar to it. But it is a fundraiser, and at the end of the day, we do need to make money off of it, and it's an extraordinarily expensive event to put on. So, I think whenever when Joey and I are working and thinking about what type of exhibitions we show, about everything, accessibility has always been at the top of our list. And in fact, one of the major construction projects we just completed was new front doors to our facility. So we did a complete renovation of the museum at 715 West Main Street and reopened in 2016. And we had gorgeous glass doors, architecturally significant. The architect out of New York won all sorts of awards for our building. And everyone struggled to open the door. And they were not ADA compliant. They didn't have to be, there's all sorts of rules that you don't have to be if you're under a certain level. But so one of the things, the top priority for us to do, in addition to retiring some of our debt with the Shands bequest, was to put front doors that you could open with the punch of a button. And we have finally done that to great expense. And they look pretty. I mean, they're not as cool as the other ones, but they look nice. But all about accessibility.
What happened to the other ones?
I am hopeful somebody kept them. They are huge, heavy pieces of glass. There's no frame. They're frameless, which is why they could never be ADA compliant. I need to ask Kentucky Plate Glass Mirror where they are.
Well, that actually leads me to the next question is, with the decline of individual giving, how have you changed development in order to do secure planned gifts, or how has fundraising shifted for you, and how do you make that sustainable? Because as you say, you've offered a lot of accessibility programming, but you still have to be able to open your doors at the end of the day.
I think everybody would like the answer to that question. But I'm going to say first and foremost for us, what we are seeing is, philanthropy in the United States is down, and it's at the bottom of the list for arts and cultural institutions. COVID had a major impact on that. Obviously, people are giving to social services and, food, clothing, shelter, all those things. We have found that people like to pay for an experience. So to me, it's not about altruistic giving anymore. It's more about transactional. So events, it feels like we got to do more events, and we got to provide more services. So, I'm always talking to the rest of our team about how when you walk into the museum, it needs to be like a boutique experience, that whether it's one thing that we did that was different when we reopened our museum is we hired a visitor services team, not a security team. So you go to a lot of museums and you have somebody that's security standing there, and I've always thought it felt very off-putting. And so we talked about how we never wanted that. We wanted somebody on our visitor services team. All of our people either have undergraduate or graduate degrees, something to do with art history. They know about these exhibitions, and they are there to try to engage with people around art, to try to make the experience more interesting. And our hope with all of these things that we do is down the line, it's a way to attract more donors. We're trying to figure out how to get all the people that are enthusiastic about coming to our free programming. We're trying to figure out how to get the next step to those that can afford to donate. And we haven't solved it yet.
I think for us, it's looking in places we haven't looked before and broadening, maybe even outside of just the region. So we are looking, for example, for the Governor's School for the Arts, the program that we have. There are graduates that are all over the country. And we have found some of our largest gifts from individuals that had an impactful experience going through that program and that want to give back now to that program and see it continue to grow. The other thing is, as we're changing, we're looking at different kinds of programming that really resonates with the community, and maybe programming, for example, for the Latin or Latinx programming. So where can we find people that are passionate about that? And it may not be who we have typically gone to before, but it's definitely looking outside of the traditional givers. I agree that there is, we see that as well. There's a transactional level to, I want to go and I want to have benefits. So that's key too, there's no question. Making sure that, your experience as a nonprofit, we're a nonprofit, but it's got to compete with what you might have if you go to, let's talk about a sporting arena where, you get the most wonderful food and drinks and service at a sporting arena. Well, now we have to be competitive with that. And so that's a lot of pressure that we have to keep our facilities in beautiful shape and our services right there as well. So it's a number of different ways we're attacking that.
You've talked about philanthropy, individual giving. Talk about the status and importance of state and local funding from the state government and from local governments. Where is that? And where would you like it to be? I'm sure more than it is now, but what's the status of that?
As far as the funding from the Commonwealth, I was so happy that Louisville received such wonderful funding this time around. I see my friend David Beck in the audience from the Kentucky Fair and Exposition Center. We as well got funding for our facility at the Kentucky Center, which is owned by the Commonwealth. But there definitely needs to be more funding all around for arts and culture. The Kentucky Arts Council, for example, is one of the lowest funded arts councils, in the country. And I think that from Louisville's perspective, there's some really incredible things happening here. So how can we attract public funding in a way that will get us to where we need to be in some of these other areas?
Yeah, I'd say other than COVID funding, we haven't really had any significant or any government funding other than Kentucky Arts Council. And that's something to think about, particularly if we value arts education in our schools, and KMAC being an organization that does a lot of that work.
How is Louisville positioned in the arts compared to similarly sized cities?
You started on that tangent, so before.
I think that Louisville is positioned in a really wonderful way. We've got, the groups that we've always talked about, the five, the Actors Theater, we've got the Performing Arts Center, we've got the wonderful Museum Row on Main, our Louisville Orchestra, with the Grammy that they just won. That's really exciting. The Louisville Ballet. So we've got all of these wonderful core groups. But what's exciting, and I think where we have room for improvement, is our individual artists. And how do we attract and make this a place where individual artists can live, be entrepreneurial, make a living, because all of that adds to the vibrancy of our city. So I think we all have to work at creating opportunities for individual artists to come in, to live here, and that in turn is a real way that I see that we could grow and improve a lot of things.
Yeah, I think actually, I think Louisville in particular has a lot to offer, and I'd say the work going on at KMAC is one of the best kept secrets. So KMAC Contemporary Art Museum is the only arts educational contemporary art museum in the state of Kentucky. We are one of only 7 American Alliance of Museums accredited institutions, and that includes zoos and historic homes and all sorts of things, not just groups with the museum in the word. I will say that my co-director, Joey Yates, is pretty unbelievable in the curatorial programming he has developed over the last 10 years, putting us, if in the larger contemporary art world, putting our museum like right up there just in terms of the quality of the exhibitions and the artists that we've attracted. Joey has this knack for spotting and introducing himself and getting to know artists that are like just about to reach the pinnacle of their career. And I guess the best example of this is to talk about so in the art world, like the Olympics of the art world, let's say it's the Venice Biennale. If you've ever heard of that, it happens every 2 years. It's going on right now. And in 2022, the artist that did all of the pavilion for the Americans, America, North America, whatever it was Simone Lee, who we gave her first museum show in 2015. Joey met her, identified her, knew she was an artist that was rising and on the cusp of stardom, and brought her here. We've had several artists and shows. I remember just right in the height of the pandemic, we had an artist, Jordan Nasser. His show was coming to Louisville from New York and had been all over the New York Times of shows not to miss in New York City. And so this is the quality and the caliber of the programming we have here on Main Street that not enough people know about, and I'd love your help in spreading the word and letting people know, because this is majorly significant and influential. I'd also like to say KMAC Couture, though it is a fundraising event, it is our mission come to life, and we've been really pleased and excited about. It's a program where this last year we had 88 artists participating. We had 68 looks walk the runway, because many are groups. And you can be in high school and apply to be a part of it, all the way to be a professional artist. And we've had 5 students start with us in high school and go on to the Savannah College of Art and Design. And some of them come back to Louisville to live, or go to Pratt, or go to some of the other art schools. And we're really proud of that, feeling like this moment for them sort of solidified the recognition of, this is what I want to do with my life. We also started a very small scholarship program for an aspiring artist who wants to go on and get an advanced degree in some sort of creative realm. And that's been going on. I think this was our 4th year for it. But you know, I feel like Louisville is flourishing in the arts. The attention and the knowledge of that in the greater community is probably very small and needs to be uplifted some in our community for us to really feel like Kentucky's made a name for itself, right? For something more than horses and bourbon. Not that those aren't great too.
I have an audience question, but your comments just now prompted something, a thought in my mind as a former TV journalist. You don't have funds, as you said, for marketing. How much free media do you get, and what is the role of the local news media in helping you promote these things? Do you reach out to them, and do they respond? Yeah,
so we struggle to get in any kind of written media. I mean, I know Leo just published an article this last week that talked about corporations leaving downtown, and they mentioned KMAC, but we struggle to get in any kind of written publication. And we probably just need more savvy people on our staff to figure out how to work those connections. From a TV perspective, Don G, let's say thank you, who, I mean, we're there once a month, at least we're on the regular schedule, so that's fantastic. We, you know, any kind of advertising money we have spent with Louisville Public Media, and I think that's great, but I feel like the Louisville Public Media audience probably knows us, and we need to get out into other places in the community.
I think for us, we've found more and more the importance of the social media presence and having people engage with us through that online and social social presence. So for us, we've got great partnerships, like you mentioned, with Louisville Public Media. And other media, typically, we do, it's funny because we do have good relationships with our press. I'd love to get, really, to be honest with you, some more national writers and national attention focused on us, because I think unless you're paying someone from, New York or a big firm, it's very hard to get that kind of awareness out. And we have so many good stories to tell, I think, nationally.
What moment in Louisville arts are you most proud of that you have personally been involved in? Some special moment that you're like, oh, this is fantastic, inspiring moment.
I mean, for me, it was coming out of our fire that we had. That was before the pandemic. We had a terrible construction fire that really put us down for a while in trying to come back from that. And the moment I think that we took out the last bit of debris, we had a press conference and we carried it out. To have continued to host performances throughout that whole reconstruction, I think we just missed a very few performances. And to have the patrons in our community come and live through that with us because they loved the performing arts and they loved the center, and to give us the grace to get through that was pretty tremendous and a moment of great pride.
I guess I'd have to say I get to experience some moment of major excitement every year with KMAC Couture. Before we moved to Paristown, we were on Main Street. We closed off the entire city block between 7th and 8th Street, and it was tented, 190-foot runway. There's 1,000 people in the audience. There's 60 looks walking the runway. There's, in the museum for the day, you have artists and models and teams of stylists and photographers, and you have never seen the hubbub of activity, and it feels like such a high because everyone is so excited to be there and have this moment and have this platform where they can show off something they did. And I think it's one of the greatest times ever.
Two questions related to the Fund for the Arts. First question is, are you both connected to the Fund for the Arts? And the other one is, does organizations like the Fund for the Arts help or hinder direct philanthropic support for your organizations?
We're a member of the Fund for the Arts, yes. Does it help or hinder? I think in the old days it definitely hindered because there were so many obstacles, but that is a very long time ago. I'd say it helps. If you're a longtime organization and participant of the Sustaining Impact Grants, you have a bad taste in your mouth because you see your funding levels go down and down and down. And they go down because the fund is raising less and giving to more. So, of course, we're going to be frustrated, right? We're not getting the same amount of money as we used to. I don't know that it currently inhibits direct giving. I don't know if it directly encourages direct giving.
We on occasion get funding for projects from the fund, but I don't believe now we have any current funding that comes to us from the Fund for the Arts. So for us, I'd say that we have a challenge with confusion, that often sometimes people think the Kentucky Performing Arts is the Fund for the Arts, and I've heard vice versa. So I'm never sure if that works in our favor or not. If it works in our favor, we love the Fund for the Arts. And I would say that, of course, what the fund does to support the many different groups that use the center, I mean, that can't be discounted, even if it's not at the level we'd like to see.
Question from the audience: how do you balance curating art experiences that are familiar to people with opportunity to introduce our community to art experiences that may be new to them? How do you balance that?
Well, I mean, I love this question. I love it because that's the big challenge is that there is incredible performances and artists that we want to introduce and bring here because we need to, and we're Kentucky and we're Louisville, but oftentimes it's unfamiliar. And so to have programs that are very popular and accessible, that's very, very important to our balance. And we do have that, but then to bring in a group like we just had with Momix, which is a contemporary dance company, and they did this incredible piece called Alice, about Alice in Wonderland that brought in all kinds of the digital exploration of Alice going into Wonderland. So that's an example. People don't know Momix, but the opportunity to bring a company like that in, have them work in the community, work with all kinds of groups to introduce them to that type of contemporary dance, and then to have that public performance where we actually can bring in access because there are tickets there, and to fill that theater is really tremendous. It's all about balance for sure, but you have to because it can't just be about what sells. I mean, that's not why we're here. We're here to challenge and to entertain. We're here, to create connections and bring people together and provoke. But also, it's very personal. People want to have fun. So for us, it's about finding all of that mix and more.
I love Kim's enthusiasm. For Contemporary Art Museum, I'd say everything is a new experience, right? So Contemporary Art Museum means we're working with contemporary artists, so artists working right now. And most of the shows we have are filled with art that was made specifically for our exhibition. So it's all new. And the challenge is figuring out how to get the community in and how to get them to understand it. If you ever want a tour, tell somebody at the first door to ask for me or Joey, because we will come down and take you through it. And a show becomes magical when you walk through with Joey. But that's why something like our Family Fun Days that we do are so fabulous, because like the current show we have, it's a great show called Wild in the Streets, focusing on artists that are inspired by the street, right? So it could be somebody who's traditionally a graffiti artist, but working with art in a different way in our space right now. And there are, how many artists are in this show, Joey? 20 plus artists, and I'd say more, 3/4 of them are Kentucky-based artists. And so like our Family Fun Day that's free, we did, the parents, caregivers will walk around the exhibitions and they will come and make stuff related to our exhibition. So, there's a lot of amazing art made from skateboards, like beautiful wall hanging pieces. And we had little miniature skateboards that you could come and decorate. I mean, there's all sorts of creative ways that our education team, that's fantastic, figures out a way to interest people and help them understand what's in the space. But just by the nature of a contemporary art museum, I don't know how many people here could name 3 contemporary artists. It's all about education and getting people inspired and enthusiastic, having a different shtick to pull them in, whether it's a party in the museum, a jewelry trunk show, which we do have coming up May 31st with our next vernissage, which is our opening night for our next set of exhibitions called the Summer Games. So sports-related art, very different from what we normally do, is the next exhibition. So free opening Friday, May 31st. Please come.
Michelle, I won't take you up on naming 3 contemporary artists, but how often do people, when they come to KMAC, want to purchase some of the art that they see?
So we are a museum. You don't walk into a museum usually and buy a piece off the wall. So we don't do that. But I mean, anybody who knows the organization from the past, when we were the Art and Craft Foundation, it was very different. It was more like an artist collective. It was a gallery space. So most of those were shows that you could buy stuff. They were for sale. That is not how we operate anymore. Much of the art is that is on in an exhibition is we're borrowing it from another institution or from a person's private collection. If artwork is for sale, like there's a piece I want to buy right now for my son, Joey can get you in touch with the gallerist who may be representing them or the artist or something like that. So you don't buy from our exhibitions.
Understood. Thank you.
Your answers to the last question lead to a more philosophical question, and that is, Should the arts in a community more reflect that community or help shape that community's culture?
Well, I think we look at KMAC and contemporary art museums as a place, as a gathering place for the community, right? For people to have conversations about difficult topics and difficult subjects. And so I think it does all these things. Particularly a show like this, I think we have the best of both worlds, where we have a huge percentage of the people coming from in the state, and then you also have an outside perspective, right? Because if we're just surrounded with ourselves, it doesn't really help us much get to the next level or get to a new way of thinking. So I think we do a really good job of making that happen. And if we had more funding, we'd be able to have a program person that is constantly hosting a group conversation like this, which we would love to do as part of our regular programming. We just don't really have capacity. We could host this group in our space and would be happy to, but I'm sure Vincenzo's would not be pleased with that. But if you have any other kind of event, we will host it in our museum for you.
Yeah, and I think both, definitely. It reflects the community that you are a part of and their values, and it shapes because it brings in perspectives that are different, and artists from all over the world that can enlighten and create a totally different dialogue.
I think we're getting close to time. Lourdes, please, just I think we have time for one more. Thank you.
I'll leave you with an easy one then. Who does the buying for your gift store? Apparently there's a fan here.
Julia Comer, who is extraordinary. I'm wearing a necklace Julia created. So she owned for many years Objects of Desire, which was on Bardstown Road. First on Lexington, then Bardstown Road. And she had a gallery called Flow in Nulu before Nulu was a thing. Julia's an incredible artist, jewelry maker primarily, and she really runs the KMAC experience. Yeah. Thank you for asking, and whoever's a fan, please.
Oh,
You said final question?
that's. I did. You're right, Lourdes. Well, if there's one more for Kim, that would be, yeah, thank you.
You've talked about the importance of exposure to young people to the arts. What steps are you taking to get the arts into these schools? You talked about students coming to where you are, but getting arts into the schools beyond, of course, the Kentucky Performing Arts School. What are you doing to fix that problem, to get exposure inside the schools to the arts?
Well, we have a really strong relationship with JCPS, and you're right, the biggest challenge that we've had really is this bus crisis that we've been through with the buses that would take young people, to the center to see children's theater. And those buses, it's been challenging, it's been expensive, and so a lot of our groups that use the center are now going into the schools. For us, when we bring in an artist, we absolutely try to get work in different locations, in different schools, so that we can have that experience. Just to bring an artist and put them on the stage, sometimes we can't get more, but if we can, we do. And there's a lot of wonderful groups that do work, so we are in the schools quite a bit. And I think back to your point of how do you bring young people to the school, to the center. We have a K-card program that we underwrite, and I think we had 100 young people that came to Frozen, but it really, we see 5,000 to 6,000 per year of young people and their families, and transportation as a means of access is part of that. We're going to people that can find ways to get these young people in groups here, and trying to expand that transportation issue of access is important. But it's a great question, and it's a work in progress.
If I'm able to answer, we do go into the schools regularly. We have an artist in residence program, and we also have a really interesting thing that was developed 30 years ago called a mobile museum, where it's actually like a museum in a suitcase, and it's on all different topics, and teachers from anywhere can order the suitcase, and it gets sent out to the school all over the state. You can also do a mobile museum and have one of our educators go and teach from it. So it's really great that not just a third grade class, but it's potentially the entire school can interact with that. There's lesson plans, there's all sorts of stuff. And something that I think is fascinating, and you all may too, is that we have a regular contract. I think it's a biannual contract with the Kentucky School for the Blind, where we do an artist in residency program with them, and that is actually through the state. Thank the Commonwealth of Kentucky, because that just got renewed. So, yeah, so we are in the school system, and we'd like to do more, but teachers are having less time to allocate for arts programming, which is another thing that we should all be concerned about. Yes.
Well, Kim and Michelle, thank you very much. Thank you, guys. And thank you everyone for coming. We'll see you, if my math is right, June 12th is our next luncheon. Thank you all. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.